Welcome to another episode of the Brett Snodgrass podcast. I have a great guest on today's episode, Miss Christina Krause with Postal Impact. But before I talk about Christina, go over to YouTube and subscribe to the Brett Snodgrass channel and leave a comment because I love replying to comments. Now, who is Christina Krause? Well, number one, she is the principal owner of Postal Impact, which is a marketing, consulting, and data analytics company that provides services for investors all over the nation. So if you're a real estate investor, you're going to want to talk to Christina Krause with Postal Impact. Today, we're going to dive into her journey. She was on top of the world 15 plus years ago, had more money than she has ever had in her life, that she could live out the days that she has on this earth with ease. Yet it all came crashing down with one enormously bad deal. And she lost her business, she lost her marriage, and she lost everything, had to go bankrupt. So today, we're going to focus in on how she gained confidence and how she was able to rebuild her business and her life. Now here is Christina Krause. What's going on, Christina?
What's up? How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I love your energy. I'm already feel like I'm just so inspired by our 10 minutes of talking over the show.
I'm injecting caffeine over into you.
I've had a couple of caffeine things today too, so I always love to do that on podcast day. And man, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show with me. We've been friends and business associates for a few years now. I've worked with you with Postal Impact, and just love you, love what you're all about, and your life. And I'm excited to dig into that today.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know I've interviewed you before, but this can be a little bit different, and we're going to dive into Postal Impact and that business and how you work with real estate investors all across the nation and analyzing data and consulting with them and your lead managers that you help investors with. But I just want to kind of just summarize your story real quick. I know that when I think about your story, number one, it really inspires me because I love talking about someone who had been successful and then had a lot of pain in their life. And you are one that has had that. So kind of tell our audience a little bit about that, how you got started in real estate and then take us into that.
Sure. Well, what's interesting is that I did not initially get started in real estate. I first wanted to go to law school. So I have an English degree, and I was like 2 weeks away from moving to Georgia to go to Emory Law School. But I had graduated from high school a year early. And at the time I was working for a bank. And I was going to be in their law department, which also happens to be in Atlanta. So it was going to work out really well. They were going to help pay for me to go to law school, and I was going to be able to, work in the bank in their legal department. But because I had graduated from high school a year early, and because I, up until that point, had worked kind of in not in their big corporate site, they told me like 2 weeks before I'm supposed to move, they were like, "Hey, we think you're a little young," because I had just turned 17. So understood. And they were like, "Okay, what we would really like is for you to come take a year, come up into corporate America or corporate banking, kind of get into that world to make sure, that you can kind of handle everything. So just take a year and then we'll pick up where we left off." And the long story short on that is that, and it's the best thing that ever happened because I never ended up going into law. I ended up loving being in corporate America, if you will. I was in banking there. And I had always known I wanted to get involved in real estate. But at the time, it was one of those things, it wasn't so accessible as it is today. You know what I mean? Like it was one of those things where like, oh, only these kinds of people can invest in real estate. So it's like, eventually when I make a lot of money or when I do this, I want to get involved in real estate. And back in the day, and I mean, we're talking about, good grief, I started investing in 1999. And when I started investing, I had been in banking for years and years and years, 10 years, probably. So first of all, yes, I'm old. If anybody, all y'all trying to do the backwards math.
I'm thinking about really the age formula right now. No, I'm just kidding.
But it just wasn't as accessible, and it wasn't, I didn't know anybody. I didn't even know you could kind of do hundreds of real estate transactions. I didn't even know about wholesaling or anything like that. But I always knew I wanted to do it, own some property, that kind of thing. And I'll never forget, I was on vacation with my family, and that was back in the day of the infomercial. I don't even know if they have infomercials anymore, but I bought a Carlton Sheets. I was on vacation and I was up at 2:00 in the morning one night, and I bought a Carlton Sheets course. And by the way, had that sitting in the corner of my room for 2 years. Like I bought it because I was like, oh, I've always wanted to get involved in real estate. We'll do that. So that sat in the corner of my room for 2 years. And then I was in charge of a department at the bank, and I was training someone to take over running the department for me. And they said, hey, for the next week, we want you to sit back in your office. We don't want you to be involved in anything. We don't want you to watch anything. We don't want you on the floor. We don't need, for all intents and purposes, we don't want that manager in training or the people to know that you're even there, but we need you to be there in case something goes dreadfully wrong. So bring something to read, do something in your office, but don't do anything work related. So I was like, okay, Carlton Sheets, this is a perfect time for me to pull this out. So at the time I was working night shift, I read that book at night, and the very next day bought my first 2 properties, put under contract my first 2 properties, no money down.
Wow.
That's a lesson in and of itself, right? Like all of the courses and all of the study that you do means absolutely nothing until you actually take action on it. So it was a life lesson for me too. But from there, like I just realized, oh my gosh, the opportunity here is so incredible. And I loved it. So I would say within another year and a half, I had quit my banking job, and I loved it. I loved what I was doing. I loved being at the bank. I worked at an incredible bank at the time. But I knew real estate was kind of my destiny, if you will. Starting in 1999 is when we began investing. I started as buy and hold, but very quickly moved into anything from, flipping and wholesaling. And we built homes from the ground up. We've done development, commercial, the whole bit. So I would say for, about 6 years, everything we touched just seemed to turn to gold. Like, it was like, we couldn't do anything wrong, right?
Kind of like today.
Yes, feels a little bit like that, right? Well, the long story short on the big splat, because you referred to the pain, because there was a massive amount of pain. Let me put it this way. Over the course of that 6 years, we accumulated enough money and a portfolio that I genuinely believed, didn't believe. I looked at it and just couldn't even fathom how we could even spend that much money in a lifetime unless we were being reckless. That was, and I'm very proud that I was proud that we built it. We were set. We were totally set. And what we did is around 2005-ish, 2006, and throughout that period, we put under contract an apartment complex that at the time, it was a very, very popular thing to do, to buy apartment complexes and convert them to condos and then sell the condos off. Super lucrative. So we did that, converted the apartment complex to condos. And then everything went awry, right? So we had gotten rid of the tenants. It was a mismanaged property. We bought for the potential of it. We didn't buy for how it was performing. That was a huge mistake. That's probably the biggest mistake that we made. But then when everything hit the fan, condo financing went away unless the building was more than 50% owner occupied, which we weren't, obviously. We were at the very beginning phases. We didn't have any owners. So instead of just being good business owners and evaluating it, we had structured it in such a way that we could have let it go, but we didn't. We just kept trying and convincing ourselves that the right thing to do was just to do everything that we could to try to make this work. Because we bought it for the potential of converting it to condos, it didn't work as an apartment complex. No matter what we would have done, maybe then in a best case scenario, we could have at least eked by for a little bit, right? But over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, it just sucked every bit of money, every bit of everything that we had built. The bottom line is we went completely bankrupt. The business went bankrupt. I had to file for personal bankruptcy because we had personally guaranteed all of that stuff. And we went down to nothing. I was 40 years old, and my parents were helping me buy groceries because otherwise I was going to struggle to feed my kids. In the midst of all of that, there was a separation and a divorce. And those circumstances certainly didn't help. That relationship had its own issues. But imagine, going through that kind of devastation, and then also your marriage falling apart. So it was a really, really tough time. Super, super tough time.
So you were like on top of the world, had enough money to live out your entire life.
We could have stopped the deal that we did that took us down. We didn't even need to do it. And we didn't even do it out of greed. It was just like, well, sure.
Everything else works. This
sure.
This will work.
Why not?
We'll figure it out.
And we had the backing of, and we're talking about a multi-million dollar project. This was ultimately going to be a project that was going to be in the $25 to $30 million range. So it was huge. That's how something like that that's how that could have been the behemoth that it was that took us out. But we didn't need to do it. We didn't need the money, and we weren't trying to be greedy. It wasn't like, ooh, it was just like,
this makes sense. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Yeah. And you said a couple of things in that, and I want to kind of hit on those. You said you bought it for the potential, not for what it was. Correct. And you can do that. You can talk about that in a lot of different ways, whether it's buying a deal, whether it's sometimes people get in a relatalship because
I was just thinking that
there's a lot of potential in this person. They're not quite the person that I want, but they have a lot of potential. But talk about that a little bit. Like, you probably talk about that even today with your own investor clients. Like, don't buy for potential.
That's right. You make your money on the buy. That's where you secure your position. So it's so important that it doesn't just become this transaction or, now don't get me wrong, I'm data. So I study markets and I study appreciation. And I think that those should be factors. I think you should be buying and transacting in places where the values of homes are appreciating, particularly if you're going to buy and hold, or if you're going to flip, where you're going to be holding on to this property for a 6 month to 1 year period. If you are in an area where the property values are depreciating, or you're transacting in a zip code where it's depreciating, honestly, like, I'm not saying don't do a transaction in there, but I'm saying get out of it as quickly as you can. If you're trying to make a decision about, do I flip this? Do I wholesale this? Study your market and figure out what's happening in the market. Now, if you're in an appreciating market, what almost always happens is that if you're flipping it and you run into an issue, oftentimes the issue corrects itself because of the market protects you a little bit, so you end up being able to sell for higher than you thought because it's appreciating. Certainly, if you're buying and holding, why wouldn't you want to evaluate what's happening with the cash flow? Is the cash flow in that particular zip code going up, or is it going down? And then obviously, of course, is it appreciating? Is this property that I'm going to purchase going to increase in value? Because that's where real wealth is built. So again, I don't want to say that you don't ever buy for the potential, but it has to be realistic potential. Not like, well, if this happens, then this, and without any technical analysis or study to back that up. So, I'm a little gun shy on the speculative purchase. But I think that you have to make sure that if you are going to buy for potential or for future value, you better have done your homework about what that means. You can't be looking at a national headline and saying, well, the market is strong, it's going to appreciate. Well, what about your zip code? And what about your market? What if that's not true of your market? You can get in really, really big trouble. What's funny is now that we've recently partnered with a data company called Housing Alerts. If you go back and look at my technical graph when we bought that property, had I had access to this kind of intel, or even understood to study the market like that, I almost wish I could show you. We were in the middle of a free fall. We wouldn't have bought it under any circumstance, much less for potential. We probably wouldn't have even bought it at all had we even known to look at it that carefully and to be a smarter investor instead of just, well, the opportunity is presenting itself. People are throwing money at me. I can do it. You got to get better. You got to get better than that.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's right. No, I love that because obviously I always call like potential. It's kind of like icing on the cake, but buy it for what it is now. It needs to be a good deal now, not for what it could be later. One other thing I want to kind of hit home on that is you said that I don't know, maybe if it was an ego thing or, you always like trying to solve problems, but you said you kept throwing money at this particular deal, that trying to make it work, to say, hey, let's just throw more money at it. And in my business, if I buy a bad deal, I always tell my team, don't throw good money at a bad deal. Let's just lose money.
And let me even tweak that statement a little more to give super clarity to it. What would have been better, because we did it because we had other investors that were involved and we thought we were having integrity, right? It would have been better for us to cut our losses and figure out a way to make good with those people with a better deal than to continue to throw good money after bad. Ultimately, what took us out was the fact that we didn't get out when we could have and should have and saw all the warning signs. Let's circle back to the potential, because, even when you think about relationships, and when I say you've got to look at the trajectory, right? So if you're in a relationship and you're like, yeah, but they have so much potential, what are you basing that off of? Is it just that you see the potential, or are they on, is the market that you're buying in on that trajectory, solidly on that trajectory? Is that person solidly on that trajectory, or are they showing you all of the reasons why it's a no? You see their potential, you see what could happen, but they're not even headed in that direction.
Right. That happens a lot. Yeah.
I feel like this is the story of my life.
That's funny. That's funny. No, that's definitely.
Talking about my personal life, or are we talking about?
Good. That's right.
It's investing, Brett.
Well, let's just get back to that then. So obviously, you had this bad deal. It was probably one of the worst times of your life. Your parents are helping you buy groceries, and you start to have to rebuild. Like, what is that like? I mean, because I know what it's like to have nothing. I remember going on a date with my daughter's mom and my debit card balances, but I never had anything to begin with. So, I was always broke. But now I have a lot. And then if I went back to being broke, it's like, man, that would really suck. And you had to rebuild that confidence, right?
Yeah. You know what is funny? The rebuild of the company started with the rebuild of my life, right? Because what I did differently the second time around and what would have prevented us from ever doing that deal, had we had a vision, okay? Had we had a defined stop it, like my cup overflows point. I felt like God told me during that time, you need to define very specifically what it means for your cup to overflow, so that when you hit that point. Because had we had a vision for our lives, and we had a loose one where we would talk about dreams, you know what I mean? But had we had a vision for our life, we would have never even considered doing that deal, if for no other reason than it would have been very clear to us, we don't need this deal. We have the most amazing lives right now. We don't need this deal. We're saying, at the time we had young children, children that were, gosh dang, then, anywhere from 5 to 7 years old. And we wanted and loved spending time with them. Yeah. So it would have been very easy for us to be like, looks like an incredible opportunity, but we don't need it. Like, what are we going to do with any more money? I mean, we were at that level where it was just kind of like, I was talking to a good friend of mine the other day, and he said, Christina, if somebody handed you $10 million, would you buy a different car? No. Would you live in a different house? No. Would you do much different in your life than you do now? Like, personally, what would you? And we were like, no. So why do we put this such importance on the dollar and the transaction amount, when there's a lot of risk that's associated when you do all of that? So had we had that vision, we'd have never done it. And what I realized is I need to be very clear about what my vision is, especially because I'm starting over, not even as a business, but as a person and as a mother and as a friend. It just completely wiped my entire life out.
Yeah. Well, because you're probably known even by your friends. You're like, oh, you're the real estate investor, very successful. That's who you are. That's who you hang out with. And then now.
And because at the time we were, I think we were we weren't the biggest landlord in our MSA, but we were certainly the biggest single family landlord. So everybody knew who we were. I mean, this was a public, blood in the street kind of thing. And I mean, it was embarrassing. And it's like, how am I going to rebuild this? So it started with defining what my vision for my life was going to be. and then building the business around
Mm.
that.
Wow.
You
That's
know, but
awesome.
starting first with the vision for my life and building a business around that. And I credit that with the success that we've had, the massive success that we've had since then,
Yeah.
because that's always my beacon. It always goes back to, is this pushing what I'm saying is important forward, or is it standing in the way? And it makes decision making very simple.
Yes, no, definitely. So what was the time frame on like this happens and the blood's in the street and then you say, "You know what? I need to create a vision for my life." What
Yeah.
was that like? Was there a gap of years in there like where
Well, yeah. So the bankruptcy itself, I mean, because imagine we had this and we had all kinds of other projects going on. We had at the height, we had I think 200, almost 200, oh, it was over 250, somewhere between 250 and 280 doors. All of that had to be, and I mean, you know, it was fighting with the banks, and it was a 3-year bankruptcy process for us. I mean,
wow.
it was insanely time consuming and painful. So there's a 3-year gap, you know, period in there where it was just trying to close down and clean up.
Mm.
And even knowing that the bankruptcy was there, there was a little bit of a hesitation for me to go and try to build anything else, because you know, you kind of want to get the splat so you can have the start over without anybody else trying to, you know,
Yeah.
see potential in anything else and then fight you even harder to let you, you know, get rid of the properties. So
And
about a 3-year.
what was your mindset like too? You know, you can finish your thought there, but I also want to know like what your mindset, like did you lose so much confidence in yourself? Like did you think I can't do this? I don't know. What is that like?
Yes. And I've said often, the only thing that saved me through all of that was that I was a worship leader
Mm-hmm.
at our church, and I just dug into that.
Mm-hmm.
I just like every bit of my heart and soul. I walked out on stage with it on my sleeve, and I walked off the stage every day a little bit more repaired, because that's the way I talk to God. You
Mm-hmm.
know, when you're singing about how good God is and your life is a complete shambles,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for some reason with me, I can be questioning how good God is, but the second I get out there or I sing, it doesn't even have to be on a stage. When I start singing, somehow my heart believes it. That's, you know what it is? That is my form of affirmation, and
Mm.
affirmations to yourself are so powerful.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have gotten through it without it. I just wouldn't have, because, you know, it was everything. That was everything that we had built. And the downfall was so public. I mean, I remember having to sit in a room with people I had mentored while they were bidding on our properties.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to sit in the front of the room and act like I could handle
Handle it.
it.
Yeah.
You know
Wow.
what I mean? I mean,
Yes.
it was brutal. It
Yeah.
was brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, so just kind of fast forward, you started to create a vision for your life. So talk to us about that. Like, how important was that? You know, where did that start? Did you learn that from somebody? What was that all about?
Well, yeah. I mean, it started with my business mentor, Steve Cook, is the founder of Life and Air.
Mm-hmm.
And he, to this day, he's been my business mentor for well over 10 years, and will be my business mentor as long as he doesn't kick me out. But between him and Sean McCloskey, who now runs Leadership Boardroom, Steve still is involved with Life and Air, and Sean runs Leadership Boardroom. And I'm a part of both of those organizations. They're both fantastic, but it is very, very vision based. It's very making sure that your life is aligning the way that you say that you want it to, and that you're not compromising on what you're doing based on, you know, based on being in a moment, and just always having your vision in front of you, and make sure that you're not violating that vision.
Yeah. So what was like, you know, you don't have to go in the whole thing, but what was like a vision of your life? Like, what did you want your life to look like?
Yeah, yeah. Because of the pain of debt, I wanted to be debt free.
Mm.
I wanted whatever I did from that moment forward to be, if I can't write a check for it, I'm not doing it. Um, And I obviously from my kid's standpoint, I mean, that was super difficult because, I was a single mom
Mm.
now all of a sudden. So, all this is going on and I'm a single mom. So I literally had to write out what I wanted our days to look like. I want my business to fit around me being able to do this with my girls and me being able to research and me being able to spend this much time with my girls. This is what I want their lives to look like. This is what's most important to me for them. Because I think even with your kids, oftentimes you get upended a little because you're in a moment and making decisions about what they can and can't have in moments instead of thinking about it ahead of time and saying, no, I would rather them not have this, but be able to be in a private school or, just being super purposeful about the decisions. And it was easy for me to do that because I had no money. So it was going to be kind of like, hey, what's important to me? How do I want us to eat? What do I want our lives to look like? Because then I had to go figure out how I was going to make that happen. And when you have to work for it right from the beginning, it is shocking. It is absolutely shocking how little you need to live a really good life. If you're being super purposeful about it and you're like, these are my must-haves, then you're like, man, that's not hard. But then when you want the extras, you're like, okay, well, it's going to take this much effort. And it just makes it a little bit easier. So yeah. I started with things like that. Like, what do I want my friendships to look like? What makes me feel like I have integrity in each area of with my health, with my friends, with my kids, with my family, all of those things, defining what all of that looks like, and then building a business that not only allows for that kind of time to get spent, but also makes enough money, that it will provide for this life and this vision that you say that you want. What do I want my relationship with God to look like? And what time is that going to require me to get up in the morning? And how much time does that make me have to invest during the day? All of those things. I mean, it's pretty intense. But programs like Life and Air and Leadership Boardroom really are helpful in guiding you through it. Because trying to get through all of that yourself is really hard.
It's really difficult.
Really hard.
Yeah. And it kind of just reminds me, I think there's an exercise, well, you guys might have done it in Life and Air, but you kind of picture how many days you have left, the average person on this life, and you got so many marbles, and then you think about, if you only had a week to live or a year to live, what would you do? Well, most of the time it is about, well, I would hang out with my kids more. I would call my mom up and tell her how much I love her, or whatever it looks like. And it's funny how it's very simple. It's like you wouldn't do all these big things. It's just a very simple, and you can do all that today, right?
Yes.
Is that what it means?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also forgiving yourself. I think it was power. What was powerful for me is going, you know what? I know this is going to sound awful, but I spend a lot of time with my kids. At the time I was like, and I get to a saturation point where I don't feel like I'm even being a good mom anymore. Right. So let me figure out how to engage them in other ways. Like, I know this sounds crazy, but even giving myself permission to go, the truth is, I really don't want to spend any more time. Right. I don't feel like this is making me better. Right. But even defining that and instead of having these grandiose ideas in your head, because everybody goes, of course I should spend more time with my kids. Well, what if you write it down and you go, I'm really happy with this. I'm happy with the time that I spend with them. What I did do is I just said, I'm happy with the time that I spend, but they get all of me. Yeah. I will not allow anything else. They're going to get good, solid, quality time with me. I'm not going to be looking at my phone. I'm not going to be making them wait. I'm not going to, this is their time. And so, it could look any way. The way that I do it isn't the way that you're going to do it, but just being purposeful about it is super powerful.
Yeah, it's very intentional, because that's probably a lot better than spending a lot of time with them, but you're always looking at your phone and they're like, oh, that's more important than me. And
that's right.
So just being present with them. That's awesome. Well, let's talk about your business. So when did you start Postal Impact? You had this vision of you wanted to be in real estate, but you kind of went with more, how can I serve investors? Yep. When did that come about?
So at the time I still had a pretty good network of investors that had known us and known what we had done, and we actually started just as a probate lead provider. We didn't do everything that we do today. We started as just a probate lead provider. And we did that because we just realized we have a network big enough that we could get boots on the ground anywhere in the country to go into courthouses and actually gather leads for investors. So we started out just by doing that. And that almost started a little bit by accident because it was more just like, let's do it for people in our network or, whatever. And then, as time went by and things just kind of naturally grew, we grew to become one of the biggest probate lead providers for real estate investors, at least in the nation. But what we were realizing was that there was a ton of churn. It was like we had no problem getting clients in the door, but it takes a lot to get somebody onboarded. And then, they would leave 3 months later. And what we realized then, because we always said we didn't want to do mail, everybody would ask us to mail the lead for them. But we were like, nope, we're just giving you the lead. That's all we're doing. And we're doing that every month. But what we realized is that people, they would say these leads suck. And you were like, well, how? The lead can't suck because I don't have anything to do with the lead. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't decide how this person was going to pass away and what kind of home they were going to leave. And what we realized is that leads aren't only as good as what you do with them. So what we realized is that people were getting upended in the marketing. So we added the mail component to it. And when you're doing anything in a high volume, and this is why I'm such a big fan of masterminds, when you're operating in a bubble, that's all you know. But what we realized is that as we were, transacting, tens and hundreds of thousands of probate transactions, you start to see patterns and you start to see, okay, this is what's working here. This is what's working there. So we were able to tweak that program until it was just insanely good. I mean, we tweaked the mail pieces, we tweaked the letters, and we were able to do it, try different things with large groups of people all over the nation. And that was when we really started to realize, because Postal Impact is really a data analytics company. Nobody, that's not sexy. So we don't say we're a data analytics company. We're a direct mail marketing, we're a list provider, because that's what people want, right? But we're really a data analytics company. When we realized how powerful data was, as we began to study it to perfect that process, as people started to say, can you do any other lists? We were like, I think we can. So we started to do that. And we started to just understand the more and more that we did, the power of taking things off of investors' plates that continually upended them. Marketing is 100% the biggest problem. Like, if you had to say there's what's the biggest pain point, is lack of consistency in marketing. So we were like, if we could get people to be consistent and methodical, and the only way we can do that is if we do it for them. So we started to do that. We started to pull lists. We started to study the data on those lists. And now what we do to pull lists is something that, as far as I know, is unique to anybody in the nation. We track our clients' data all the way through their sales pipeline. So we pull our lists based on not just like the markets that we're studying and where the deals are. We're not just chasing deals. We're actually evaluating our clients and how they process leads and how they convert leads. So we're helping them, to identify where the breaks in their systems are, because the beauty of data is that once you get enough of it and you compress it down, there's only so many standard deviations that anybody can deviate, right? Before you realize, oh, there's your break. So it's super fast, it's super efficient. But then also, everybody wants to know what the hot list is. And our thing is, that's a really lazy question. The hot list isn't the hot list for everybody. What if your team doesn't convert that list well? Probate is a perfect example of that. There are some people, probate hands down is the most lucrative lead out there. It's the most consistent, lucrative lead out there. And there are some companies that just cannot convert it. And for whatever the reason, they've got a mental block about it. They've got something going on in their, industry. You have to ask yourself, what are my exit strategies? What are my investment strategies? That's how you determine what list to pull. How does my team convert? What is my team strongest at converting? What lead types, what scenarios do they convert the best on? Instead of going, hey guys, what's the mail piece that's working? Well, guess what? What if the same mail piece doesn't react in all areas of the country the same way? That's true. I can tell you that is very, very true. What if, a pink postcard works for a lower to moderate income area, and a white postcard works better in a wealthier area. But we chase these headlines constantly. It's like, oh, what's the hot lead? What's the hot postcard? How many deals are you doing? You got to ask better questions than that, right? It's like, okay, what kind of investor are you? What are your end goals? All of those things are the things that we ask when we're working with our clients to pull lists. And that's what makes it fire.
Yeah.
It's just making sure that you incorporate the study. We're not chasing deals. Chasing deals is really, really lazy because in fact, I really want people to stop saying, in order for them to determine the value of an investor, how many deals do you do a year? Because if you do 200 deals a year, the better question is, how profitable are your deals? Because if you do 200 deals a year and then you tell me that you're making $2,000 profit on each of those deals, I ain't got respect for that. In fact, you scare me to death. You're gonna burn out. Like, talk to me in 6 months.
Yeah.
You're dead. You're going to be dead. It has to be, all right, how many deals are you doing? Good question. Better question. How profitable are those deals? Even better question. Do you know which of your deals, if you did 100, which segment of them was the most profitable? Okay. And is it possible for us to eliminate a portion of that list that's actually unprofitable? You might have a profit margin on it, right? But how much effort went into each of the deals? How do you ask questions like, which ones were the easiest and most lucrative deals, and chase those characteristics so that, you're finding what's the 20 to 30% of your list where 70 to 80% of your yield is coming from. Everybody can answer that question, but it takes discipline.
Yeah, it does.
It takes discipline to learn that.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that when you're talking about how profitable are you on those deals, because in 2017, our company did 350 so deals, and then now we're doing about 250, which sounds we're doing 100 less deals, but making more money, which is great. Yeah.
It's opportunity cost.
Yeah.
The better question is, how much did that cost you though? Okay, so let's even say I got a $30,000. How many of us have done $30,000, $40,000 deals and went, that was so not worth it. So not worth it. I don't care. And then because once you add brain damage and soft costs and all of those things that that most of us don't have the discipline to ask ourselves on, it's just more like, oh, there's the net profit. Really? Because how much time did that take versus that other deal?
Yeah.
And you got to factor those soft costs in when you're doing that stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why I love Postal Impact, guys, because a couple of things just kind of want to note here is that, so Brian Snyder became our COO, who's now our CEO. And one thing when he took over as CEO, he said, we're going to be a company that's driven by data. And I was like, well, that sounds like the unsexiest thing I've ever heard of, right? Like, I want to be spontaneous and let's get some passion and some fire in there. It just doesn't sound like any of that, but it was key, right? A company that's driven by data. And that's exactly what Postal Impact does. And another thing that, Christina, I keep hearing you say is you keep adding to your business and adding some really amazing things, but you added those things because you listened to your clients.
Yes.
It's like people kept asking you, like, hey, have you ever thought about this? And then so you just gave them what they wanted, right?
You follow people's pain.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. And in business, in relationships, where is your pain? And am I capable of doing something that adds value in such a way that I am eliminating pain from your life, and adding value to myself? And that's when I think you have a magical relationship. But you have to love people. You have to care about people enough to care about what their pain is, not what your skill set is, not what you want to do. Not if you're going to serve people, then you have to love them enough to ask them, and to listen. To listen to what their pain points are. And please believe me, I'm not preaching at you. I have failed. I can give you example after example after example of, and to this day, of how I fail at that. But you have to be committed to always saying, and because every bad thing, we literally almost let a client go. And this just happened in the past couple of days. And then we went, okay, listen, if we are going to say that we love people, then, let's dig in. and just figured out that there was something going on that had nothing to do with us, but that was making them just upending them and making them an absolute mess. And there was something that we could do for them that it's just literally immediately eliminated that pain point for them. And we almost just got so mad because of how they were coming at us, and that's what people do. Like, people attack and they want to project and they want an excuse, and like, sometimes it's hard, but sometimes the way that you serve people to say, okay, hold on, like, you don't have to accept my help, but I'm willing to sit down and walk through this with you and really understand your pain. And the truth is, if we couldn't have helped, then you go. If you're evaluating a relationship or your business or whatever, if you can't do it, you can't do it, right?
Yeah.
But you have to care enough, like, it's not the other person's responsibility to accept what you want to give. It's our responsibility to go, okay, hold on. How do I show up for you? How can I show up for you, Brett? How can I show up for you, Brian? How can I, how can I serve you best? And at the end of the day, that ends up serving us best too.
Yeah.
Always.
Exactly. It just kind of reminds me, I mean, we work with motivated stars all the time, and sometimes they get those calls and someone is very upset. They're screaming, and sometimes those are the best calls, because we can say, hey, let's just stop and start to work it out, And
yes.
something deep's going on. There's some painful things.
There's
right?
pain there. Yeah. And it might not even, and I think more often than not, it doesn't even have anything to do with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, real quick rundown, Postal Impact. So you guys work with real estate investors all across the nation. You're kind of a white glove marketing company where you provide lists, marketing, mail. You also consult with, analyzing people's data. What are some other things that you guys do? Just give us a quick rundown.
Yeah, we're actually super committed now to trying to figure out how to add value to any investor instead of just, we're kind of well known for working with some of the biggest and best investors in the nation, super big investors. But through COVID, actually, there's I don't know if you've ever heard of Ken Wade, but Ken Wade founded Housing Alerts a while back. Housing Alerts is a platform that analyzes markets on a national level. And we have worked with him for years and years and years for our really big clients. These are the kind of clients where, we go in, we perfect marketing, and then they go, okay, where do we go next? And we could go anywhere in the nation. So we have to study the markets and say, okay, we're basically just chasing markets and yield all across the nation. I never really saw the value of that to the local investor, the person who's limited to their backyard or their county or whatever, because if I said, hey, your county is appreciating or it's depreciating, what value is it to you if I tell you your county is depreciating, if that's where you have to transact, right? Well, it's funny because through COVID, when so many of our investors, very few stopped, thank God, but some people needed to pull back, especially when there was the uncertainty of it. And we realized that what everybody was doing was going, what's getting us our most deals, right? And this is where we really came to understand, okay, wait a second, stop asking who's getting the most deals. You need to look at how profitable the campaigns are. So if our campaign is not doing as many deals, but you're making an average of $40,000 of profit on our deals, and somebody else, some other campaign is beating us out, but you're making $8,000 on those. I mean, you have to factor all of those things in. And we started to really study, just try to understand, how do you chase yield on individual deals? As we were studying the economic recovery through COVID, okay, we realized that it's a very K-shaped recovery. And now that term is kind of out there, but there are some industries that are recovering and if not thriving, and there are other industries that are completely decimated and probably always will be. It'll be different throughout that time period. But then as I was studying that, I realized that even within specific industries, think about restaurants. The restaurant industry is thriving if you just look at it as a global, and nobody should be looking at anything globally. But if you look at it globally, fully recovered, if not thriving. But the truth is, there are other pieces within that industry that are, think about buffets, think about things like that, gone, maybe never coming back, right? Certainly not in the way that we knew them. Believe it or not, Chinese food restaurants, complete free fall. It's so funny. And it made me go, I wonder if this could potentially be true of even within counties. Like if I could take a county and I could split it out into zip codes, could I identify zip codes within a county where there's appreciation and zip codes where there is depreciation? And in almost every instance, we can. So understanding technical analysis, true technical analysis of the market, and how if you overlay that technical analysis to your marketing dollars, we realized the power of it, which is why we ultimately fully joined forces, and we're combining our data superpowers. We have sales pipeline data, Postal Impact, Housing Alerts has market analysis data. And so we decided to kind of combine our superpowers with that company. So what we're super passionate about right now is just teaching people that Housing Alerts is an easy button. It is literally like all the technical analysis is done. All you have to do is be a subscriber to that platform to see, what your local market is doing, and allow that to use. It's not going to tell you what to do, but it's going to guide your decisions. So if you need to compress your marketing budget, why wouldn't you, instead of nthing, what we call nthing data? So if you have 25,000 points of data and you can't market to 25,000 pieces, what you would do is you would nth it. You would just take every ninth record and randomly choose it. But what if you could look within any micro market even that you're in and say, well, if I need to compress this, let me focus on the 4 zip codes that are the most vibrant and the hottest zip codes, right? Let me do that. Or let me allow this to help guide how I choose to go. Like maybe I was on the fence about, do I buy and hold this or do I wholesale it? Well, if it's in a declining market, wholesale it. If it's an appreciating market, allow that to guide it. So we're allowing that pain point, and I'm a very easy button person. If I identify a pain point, I want to solve it for you. So Housing Alerts is, like a calculator, if you will, to a really hard math problem. It's not going to give you the answer, but imagine trying to, do a really hard math problem without a graphing calculator. You can do it, but it's going to stink. Another thing that we did that is just so good is I know Tim Bratz.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our clients for years have asked us to do a done for you multifam or alternative asset marketing program. And what we realized when we got into that is that there's just nothing out there. And not only that, even the data, even right down to pulling the lists and identifying the targets, it's the wild, wild west when it comes to the data. So you don't even know how good your lists are. And we ultimately ended up partnering with Tim Bratz to come up with a done for you multifam marketing, kind of like a journey campaign. Because we kept having our clients saying, hey, we really, really, really need this. So we've designed an entire program that just kind of like gives them a support system, not even just with like dispoing the deals, but also just doing whatever we have to do to make sure that the target list that we're pulling for the clients is of absolute and utmost quality, even if it means that we're manually researching, owners and things like that. But then also getting people accustomed to this idea that I'm very much about journey marketing right now. Like, what are you doing for these people? If I'm an investor, if I'm a service provider and the investor is my client, I'm obligated to say to my investor, what's your pain? What is the pain that I can help you solve? If you're an investor, and I'm still an active investor to this day, then you have an obligation to, like, what are you doing for these people who are making you hundreds of thousands of dollars? Do you care about them? Or is it just like, let me get you in and churn you out and let me just look at you like a transaction? Or are you going, am I willing to invest in you? I was just speaking at an event and I said, when bankruptcy fell off the cliff, the bankruptcy lead, the high stress leads through COVID just stopped performing. Right. And you can imagine why. There's moratoriums. People don't have that pain and that fear. And I got really frustrated with people who were just, because I was like, okay, but if you really care about these people, like you say you do, and you really want to help them and you see yourself as an answer, then why aren't you willing to talk to them right now, knowing that their pain is coming? Their pain is not,
it's coming. It's
their
just
pain
delayed.
doesn't feel as much as it is now. But are you, this idea of journey marketing, are you willing? Do you only want the person that's just going to immediately give you what you want? Or is there anything that you could be doing to this group of people that might not be responding right now, but that will respond a year from now, a year and a half from now? What kind of investment are you willing to make into these people's lives? So that's kind of the direction that we took with the multifam marketing. Is just the done for you is very, very relationship driven, credibility building, that kind of thing. And just trying to get people out of their heads on marketing, where it's just kind of like, if I spend $1,000 this month, I better make 3,000 this month.
Yeah. Very transactional.
Yes.
No emotion.
Yes.
No relationship.
No relationship, no emotion. And that's not okay.
Yeah.
Not if you didn't, at least then, or at least then don't act like you care.
Right. just put it out there. Just say I don't care. Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, sounds good, guys. Well, check out Postal Impact with Christina. Amazing company. You guys are doing so much, especially with the data. And I think it's just so important. One thing, again, is as I see these headlines, it's like what they say, the rise in the housing market is the best ever, I think in May. And well, that's national. And I was like, oh, cool. And I just figured that was my market too. But really, was it? I don't know. I should probably look that up,
We can help you with that. So, I've actually been working with Brian.
Sounds good. Sounds good. One last question before we go to the last section of the show, Christina. So we went through kind of your journey and your pain a little bit. And I want to just ask you, how do you run your business today that's different than you did 15, 16 years ago?
Whew. So many different ways. But I will say the biggest difference to our growth, there's just not even a question. There's just not even a question. Even at the height of our success, I was stressed out to the max. I had my hands in so many things. I didn't trust people. And so, or the second they screwed up, I decided I didn't trust them anymore. Everything that we do today, we do because I have a team of people behind me that are amazing. And the reason why they are amazing is the same reason that I have come into a different place in my life. I am very, very much a believer that you need to know what your genius zone is. You need to know what you are really, really, really good at. And you need to operate in that genius zone as much as possible and stop. Our problem as investors and entrepreneurs is we can do anything. We're smart. We're capable. We can do anything, but we can't do everything. And once you start trying to do everything and you start watering down your genius and watering down everything that you do, mediocrity begets mediocrity, period. Yeah. It's poison. And there's no possible way that you can be spread in 1,000 different directions and be doing anything excellently. You can't do it. You can't do it. And I actually think that of every area of your life, it's incumbent upon you to make sure that in every area of your life, you're working towards excellence, because that will bleed over into business. Problems in problems with your health, not taking care of yourself, all of that bleeds over. Yeah. But here's the bottom line. Our team became so important that we literally, we won't even hire. When people come to us, we're like, okay, but what do you really want to do? What's your vision? So we got very into finding out what they really wanted and making them define it for us. And then as a company going, okay, our job then is to identify what your genius zone is, what lights you up, what do you do best, and make sure that we protect you from the company, because companies, we suck our people into stuff they shouldn't be involved in all the time because we're just in survival mode in that day. But building things that go, nope, we're going to protect you. We see that this is stressing you out, or we see that you're getting pulled in too many different directions. Our job is to protect them. Our job is to understand what their long-term goal and vision is. And then as a company, we go, I don't care what that is. You want to go take tennis lessons? Let me figure out how to build tennis lessons into your and obviously I'm using a silly example, but not because it doesn't have to do anything with what we do. Right. Brenda and I literally meet and go over, take notes and go over and say, okay, What can we do? I mean, we've done stupid things like bought a, somebody said, man, I'd love to have I think it was a pinball machine or something. And,
That's awesome.
you work stuff like that in. The bottom line is caring about your people, sewing into your people, making sure that you stay in your genius zone, making sure that you identify and make sure they stay in their genius zone. And anything is possible after that, but we can't do it by ourselves.
Yeah.
Like we can't, not and do it super, super well.
Yeah.
You identify talent and then you compensate that talent well, and you treat them well, and you care about them, and you love them, even if they don't do it themselves. It's your job to go, you stress. What do I need to do for you?
Yeah.
How do I help?
Yeah.
You listen to, you follow the pain.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. And you guys take amazing care of your team. And I think that as a business owner and entrepreneur, we're always looking to better ourselves and stay in our genius zone. I mean, we're studying that and stay within what we're strong at. But sometimes we forget about our team. It's like, okay, we hire them because they're good at this. But then, like you said, we suck them in. I need to get this done. So you go ahead and do it, even though you're terrible at it. But we don't think about that. We're just like, we got to get it done.
And we don't even think about the cost of it either. It's like, well, it's got to get done. So even if they can only get done at 70%, but what is it costing that person? I was just having a discussion on another panel I was sitting on about like, when do you know that you should hire another person? And my take on that is kind of like what churches' takes are on it. It's proven in churches that once they hit 80% capacity, you don't wait until you're overflowed to build or to expand. If the goal of the church is to expand, then at 80%, and this is proven fact, at 80%, you have to have the next service. You have to add the next service or the building or whatever, because otherwise you're not going to grow past that point. I genuinely think that of people too. Like, you don't wait until people are like dragging their knuckles on the ground. You go, nope, this person's at 80%, which is about all you can really expect, realistically from people. And when they see you doing things like that, like going, and obviously you go through seasons sometimes where everybody's all hands on deck, but that can't last very long for you or for them. You got to make sure that you're really evaluating when somebody's overloaded, and you start with efficiency. Obviously you need to make sure that the time is being used efficiently. And then you got to save them from themselves, even if you have to.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Christina, for this nuggets, taking us through your journey. This is Christina Krause with Postal Impact, guys. Check out Postal Impact, great service provider for real estate investors all across the nation. Christina, I'm going to end the show. This is called Craziness with Christina, because sometimes you like to get crazy.
Okay.
All right. Now, this is just 4 questions, super short answers, less than 1 minute long. Just have some fun here. So number 1, what is your go-to karaoke song?
Okay. I'm trying to remember the lyrics to make sure it's okay. Do you remember the song Lit? My Own Worst Enemy by Lit.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's my go-to karaoke.
Okay, I love it. I
like that part. That's the part I sing really loud.
You just take me back to, I have that CD when I was like, 18, 19 years old, in my car, in my Camaro, in the Lit. That's awesome. Sounds good. All right, let's see. So it's number 2. Do you really love data, or is this just a front?
Ooh, that's a great question.
I always thought about that. Like, does she really she has a
person? I only love data because I understand its power. But ask me to collect it. I like looking at it at the end. Ask me to collect it or whatever. And again, that goes to knowing your genius. I actually do not. I can't even say I love data, but I love how powerful it is. Yeah. And so I'm obsessed with it. I'm absolutely obsessed with data because data keeps me out of my head. I'm a very emotional, intuitive person. And a lot of people find that surprising out in the business side because I'm so data allows me to process business in ones and zeros. And it allows me to be a really good business person because it takes my gut and it takes my emotion out of it. Data to me is truth. It's a guiding light. So it's just like, okay, if you're insecure about your, like how good of a business person you are, get data. It'll tell you what to do. That's why I love it. It tells you exactly what to do. Yeah.
All right.
And I was right. That's why I hate it. I don't like the data smarter than me.
Love that answer. All right. 2 more. So you give a lot of presentations, mastermind groups, speeches, whatever. What do you do right before a presentation in front of a large group? Like, do you have anything? Like, what do you do?
Ooh. Okay. So little known fact. I am massively insecure. I don't have anxiety and depression or anything like that, but I have a lot of insecurity. And I have had people say that they see me do this. The truth of the matter is, oftentimes when I'm about to go, I literally physically will take a deep breath and kind of charge out. And I promise you, this is a true story. I charge out. And if people watch my speaking videos, I'm half running almost onto the stage. And I'm doing that because if I don't do that, I'll run the other way. I'm not kidding. I'm so not kidding. Sometimes you got to do, and then once you're there, it's kind of like the gym, right? You find your rhythm and whatever, but sometimes you just got to sometimes you just got to suck it up. There's no like right answer, but sometimes you just got to go. I do that sometimes when I wake up and I'm struggling with this or that. You just go put one foot. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Get up there, Christina. Get up there. God gave you this opportunity. You better get out. You better get up there and you better light them up. And so you just do it. I tell my kids this all the time, man. They're like, that's easy for you to say, Mom. You're so confident and you're so, no. Sometimes you just go, okay, I have this opportunity. Let's go.
Yeah. I think we all have like these insecurities because I do a lot of podcasts. I do a lot of videos and speaking, things like that. But sometimes I'm watching myself and I'm like, you are such an idiot. Like, what are you doing? Like, you look terrible. Anyways,
why did you say that?
All right. Last one. Something amazing happens to you. Who do you call and tell about it?
Okay, the obvious one is my sister and business partner is Brenda, right? From a friend standpoint, I would say honestly, Sean McCloskey and I have known each other for I think like 12, 13 years. So from a business standpoint, I would say that I've got a friend that I'll call. And then I have, of course, a family member or a business partner and sister that I'll call. But definitely I share just everything with Brenda. Like Brenda's my go-to.
And Brenda is your sister.
Yes.
Right? Business partner. Yes. And I met Brenda. She's amazing.
Yes.
And so you're like the vision. She runs the operations. Is that pretty much?
Yes. No, yeah. I'm the joker out. Just jumping around and being a clown. And she's behind me cleaning up my mess all the time.
Love it. Awesome. Well, hey, Brenda, if you're watching this. And this is with Christina Krause. Thanks so much with Craziness with Christina. This is an amazing episode. Love your story. Love your journey. You inspire us all, Christina. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that so much. Thank you for having me too.
Thank you so much for checking out the Brett Snodgrass channel. If you like this video, please slam on that like button. And if you really like it, then subscribe to our channel here. And remember to leave us a comment below, and I'm going to try my hardest to reply to all the comments. Thank you guys so much. This is why I do what I do. Every single week, I come out with content that focuses on success, freedom, and living out your purpose. Thank you guys so much. See you next time.